Well, welcome back to Bible 8. Today we're starting a new section, section 3.4. So go ahead and take your student textbook and turn there. And also while you're at it, take out your Sermon on the Mount outline because we're going to be referencing that here at the beginning. Here we're going to see at this point in the sermon that Jesus shares 6 illustrations to help his listeners understand that the intent of the law was to deal with internal issues. In fact, each illustration points to this fact. The heart of the matter is a matter of the heart. So go ahead and take your sermon outline there, and you can write in there on that statement 6 illustrations that get to the heart of the matter. They get to the heart of the matter because that's what these do. Now, the Pharisees and the other religious leaders were focused on the outward, strictly keeping the law, looking good on the outside, emphasizing the externals. But Christ was focused on the heart, and the law was intended to get to those matters of the heart. And our study of these 6 illustrations here are going to show us some things that will get to the matters of the heart. And the study of these 6 illustrations will take us through the end of this unit. So let's go ahead and get going. To start out, I want you to read your textbook. I'm going to have you read pages 86 and 87. This is the section we're in. And I want you to really focus on that first thinking it through question. And then I want you to read Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 to 26, just 5 verses there, that will help us to see this text in the light of this being one of Jesus' illustrations. Then we'll come back and we'll jump into looking at it. All right, so now that you've read the text and the scripture text in regards to what we're going to be covering today, you'll have a good understanding of the direction we're going. Now, I had you look at that first thinking it through question and kind of keep that in mind as you were reading. So let's go ahead and look at that. Question number 1, what is always at the heart of murder? And of course, the answer is pretty obvious, but it's anger. And I wanted to focus on the fact that the question said, what is always at the heart of murder? This is key. Anger is always there at some point. You know, murder can be done for other reasons, but ultimately at the bottom of the heart, there's some anger there. And so we're going to talk about this anger, not always in regard to anger that causes someone to murder, but just anger itself. And that brings us to our significant scripture passage for this section, Matthew 5:22, where Jesus says, "But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, Thou fool, shall be in danger of hell fire." We're going to look at this in depth, talk about some of these terms that you might think, what are these? What does this mean? But ultimately, what Jesus is saying here, and the significance of this passage is this. Anger, which is at the heart of murder, is sinful and deserves judgment. All right, in our mind's eye, let's go back to the hillside outside of Capernaum, and let's join Jesus as he's teaching. Let's jump in as he gives this first illustration. Matthew 5, verses 21 to 22. "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, Thou fool, shall be in danger of hell fire." So we notice here the first time that Jesus is going to use this device to introduce an illustration. And he puts it this way. "Ye have heard that it was said, but I say unto you." And that's how we're going to cover each of these illustrations. We're going to look first at what did the people hear, what had they heard, and then we're going to look at what Jesus is saying to them. So let's first look, what had the people heard? This is what they'd heard. Murder is wrong and deserves punishment. And this goes all the way back to the Old Testament. In Exodus 20, verse 13, "Thou shalt not kill." So the people knew murdering was wrong. But then Jesus proceeds to inform the people that those who are serious about the law, the Pharisees, they really weren't serious enough. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean by that they understood don't murder and to keep the law. But they weren't serious enough to go underneath and see, okay, what causes murder, and then deal with that. All right? So he corrected a common misuse of the law, which was just to take it at itself and not get down to the heart of the matter. He included what most people left out of the discussion. So what was Jesus saying? This is what the people heard. But then what did Jesus say, which was an extension or getting into really what the law meant and what its intended purpose was? That's this. Anger needs to be dealt with properly. Now, let's go to the text again, because I want to look at here, verse number 22. All right. He says, "But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment." So we see here that there should be some real emphasis put on being angry, and it shouldn't just be wiped away and just not dealt with. Okay. And then he says here, "And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council." Now, what is this thing about Raka? Well, this is where you would call somebody senseless. They're worthless. It's a worthless individual. It's a term of contempt. It's almost like it's a word that you would use as if you would spit in a person's face. Like if someone were to come to you and they're talking to you and you get so mad, you're so angry with them, you just spit in their face. That's what this term Raka deals with. So what he says here is, whosoever shall say to his brother or a fellow Jewish person, Raka, spit in his face, with words, he says, shall be in danger of the council. Now, the council here would be the Sanhedrin, the ruling council. He's saying this should be treated as an offense, just like the one that the Sanhedrin would judge. And then he goes on to say, "But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire." Thou fool. It's like he's saying, if you were to have such contempt for someone that you're like, you stupid idiot, because he's talking about a fool being someone who's morally deficient. This is a condemnation. This isn't just saying, oh, you did something foolish. It's like getting in somebody's face and you're so angry with them and you're just like, you're an idiot. And you just have this anger. He says he should be deserving of hellfire. Now, the word hellfire here is in the Greek, the word Gehenna. And when he said that word, everyone knew what he's talking about. Because Gehenna was a word that pictured a valley outside of Jerusalem that was really the city dump. And this came all the way back from the kings of Israel when they had gone into idolatry. And the good king came on the throne, and it was Josiah, and he had all these things taken care of, and he took care of the idolatry. He crushed all the idols, all the altars, and then he made that valley a dump. And so down through the years, this was a place where they would throw all their refuse. Criminals that had no connection to anyone, they would throw their dead body there after they were executed. Just a horrible place, and it was burning because they tried to burn this refuse. This was the place, they said, if you're going to be angry, you deserve judgment like this. Now, was Jesus actually saying that, if you get angry with somebody, you should go to hell? No. What he's saying is that the Pharisees had said, if you're going to murder someone, you're going to be punished, and you need to be punished by the law. But Jesus says, anger needs to be punished too. There needs to be some things in place here for anger. You just can't get away with this. Why? Because anger is at the heart of murder. Now, that's a lot to say. And again, I want to say this doesn't mean that if you get angry that you deserve, to be cast out and all this. It's just showing that there should be more emphasis placed on dealing with anger than we do. It's not something we should just throw under the rug. It's not something we should go, oh, they just got mad, or I just got mad. No, this is important to deal with. And we look in the scriptures, there are multiple places in the Bible where the Bible deals with anger. And if we wanted to find those verses, let's think about this. Let's think Bible study here. If we were to find verses about anger, how would we go about doing that? Well, we would look up the word anger in a concordance or a Bible study software, or we'd find some synonyms for anger, and we'd look those up. So I did that for us because I want us to look at some other scriptures that tell us about anger to give us this idea that this is not something to be treated lightly. So let's look at some other warnings in the scripture against anger. And we'll go through these quickly. Psalm 37:8. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. Proverbs 14, verse 17. He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly, and a man of wicked devices is hated. Proverbs 14:29. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. Ecclesiastes 7, verse 9. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Now let's go to the New Testament. Romans 12:19. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Ephesians 4:31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. Colossians 3, verse 8. But now ye also put off all these, anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of thy mouth. In James 1:19 and 20. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. And then I want to focus on one verse here. Ephesians 4:26. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Now, you say, Mr. Spurgeon, you've shown us all these verses about anger and how bad it is, and then you showed us how Jesus looked at it and said, anger needs to be dealt with. But then we see a verse here in Ephesians that says, be angry. Well, hang on a second. You did notice that I put in there, and sin not? Yes, there is an anger. Anger is an emotion. And if that anger pushes us to do something right, we see a cause that needs to be taken care of, we see a wrong that needs to be righted, and that anger toward that helps us to right that cause, that's fine. Jesus himself was angry when he cleansed the temple. He says, how dare you treat my Father's house as a den of thieves? So yes, there was this righteous indignation. But when he says sin not, he says don't let your anger turn to sinful anger. And that's anger that's usually pointed at a person instead of a thing. Where you are now mad at somebody and you're angry with them and you're going to show them how angry you are. It becomes sinful. And sinful anger always needs to be dealt with. All right, so let's go back to our text here. In Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, when we talk about anger and how Jesus dealt with it, I'm going to give us a couple points to ponder, something to think about here. First one is this. Anger shows that you don't value the person who is the object of your anger. See, we are all made in the image of God. And because of that, we have intrinsic value. Because God created us, and he loves us. So think about it. In this whole thing about us being created in the image of God, the reason that murder is wrong is based on a truth. And what is that truth? That truth is that man is made in God's image. Back in Genesis 9, verse 6. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. In this verse, God is putting his stamp of approval on capital punishment. And here's the only reason. Because God said, man was created in my image. And so if you're going to murder someone, if you're going to destroy that image of God, your life is going to be taken also. And I don't want to get into the whole thing. All it's showing us here is that God states that the reason that this is so bad, that murder is so wrong, is because you're killing an image bearer of God. So what does that tell us then about anger? If anger is at the heart of murder, what should that tell us? Well, let's go back to another point to ponder here. Anger shouldn't be a characteristic of a kingdom citizen. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to put your pen down. I want you to sit back in your seat. Take a deep breath. And think about the implication of Christ's teaching here in the text, in this illustration. Think about this. Just as you shouldn't murder a person, you shouldn't get angry with a person. And let me say that again. Just as you shouldn't murder a person, you shouldn't get angry with a person. And you say, can we really equate those? Jesus did. There is no reason that you should ever show unrighteous, uncontrolled anger against another individual. Let's let that sink in for a moment. All right. Let's go ahead and wrap things up here. I'd like you to take your student activity book and let's turn to page 150 because we're going to look at your prayer journal assignment here. Page 150. All right. Section 3.4 here. You look here, it says the Bible's full of warnings about anger. Some of those verses I've already shown you. And then write your prayer. If you're a kingdom citizen with an anger problem, then you should realize that you need to focus on reflecting the inward characteristics of the Beatitudes. And then he goes through some of the Beatitudes here. I would encourage us, even if you don't think you have an anger problem, all right, this is really good reference for all of us in how to deal with internal things rather than just the external. So go ahead and work through that prayer journal assignment, write out that prayer. And then what we're going to do is next time. Let me talk about next time. Because you may ask, well, what do I do if I've gotten angry at someone before? What if I've blown my top at my sibling? Or what if I've been angry at my parents? What do I do if that happens? We'll come back next time because we're going to look at what Jesus says about dealing with anger. We'll see you then.